Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new and you like to hear about opinions, reviews, and analyses on films, books, and TV shows, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more content from me. Today's video will be about my review and thoughts on Taylor Jenkins Reid's The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Guys, this book, I have so many thoughts and feelings about it. Everyone on TikTok, Instagram, and hell, even Tumblr kept raving about this book. And at first, I was a little skeptical. People also raved about Alexis Hall's boyfriend material, but I couldn't even get through a quarter of the book because I hated the protagonist and he seemed whiny. But Evelyn Hugo, it's one of those books that you get immersed in, and when you're done reading it, it leaves a lasting impression on you. It stays on your mind for days or even weeks. So let me begin with a spoiler-free review. Right off the bat, let me just say, you have to read this book at least once in your life. Genuinely, this is one of the books that you have to read. It's beautifully written, and Reid does an amazing job of immersing you back in the past of 50s to 80s Hollywood, pulling back the curtain on the glitz and glamour that was often associated with that time period. I was a little hesitant at first because it was told in first-person POV, but it really works for this novel. It was a little confusing at first, since there were jumps between Monique's perspective as she interviews Evelyn, then with Evelyn recounting her life story and her 7 husbands. But eventually, you understand the pacing and the switches, and it really works in bringing the past and the present together. I have always been fascinated with the studio era of Hollywood, but I also know from film history that it wasn't all glamorous. The book doesn't shy away from the ugly side of Hollywood, and it really does make you feel for Evelyn, especially when she was just starting out in Hollywood. So genuinely, her stardom almost reminds me of Marilyn Monroe's, with some differences, obviously. That being said, she's not a perfect character, but you can't help but love her because of how flawed and realistic she was. She's one of the best written female characters I've seen in a while, and sure, she has her moments when you're like, holy crap, Evelyn, did you really have to do that? But she's so unapologetically her, both virtues and flaws. So that's all I'm gonna say for my spoiler-free review because I think I'm getting a little too close to spoiling the book for those of you who haven't read it. So yes, I loved The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I would not overstate how much you should read this book at least once in your life. So now that we're done with the spoiler-free review, I will be giving my thoughts and reactions to specific things in the novel. If you don't want to be spoiled, feel free to skip this part of the video. I will say that I knew about Evelyn's bisexuality playing a huge role in the novel even before I read it. Bookstagram and Tumblr had quotes and gift sets and edits. So I knew about Celia St. James and Evelyn Hugo before I even read the book. But I had thought that Celia was going to be mentioned in the later part of the novel. I didn't expect that she would be a huge part of the novel, that this epic love between them really was an epic love spanning decades. So they were together, break up, and always find their way back to each other. It really was beautifully written, their relationship. I loved how they got married near the end, but by God, did I start crying when Celia died, and all Evelyn could think of was that they didn't have enough time. So Celia is obviously my favorite when it comes to Evelyn's spouses, but of her husbands, my personal favorites were Harry Cameron and Rex North. Rex was a favorite because there was very little drama between them and they had a genuinely good friendship, even if their marriage was for convenience. As for Harry, God, where do I even begin? He was Evelyn's best friend and platonic soulmate and the father of her child. His story, though, was the most heartbreaking, especially when he lost the love of his life. I was so sad when Evelyn recounted how he spiraled after John's death and that his drinking ultimately caused his death and the death of James Grant. But holy crap, like I did not realize that Evelyn and Monique shared an actual connection. Like I genuinely thought that Evelyn just chose Monique to write her biography for no reason. But when Evelyn revealed that the boyfriend in the car with Harry when he died was Monique's father, like, bro, I did not see that coming. I literally had to go back and reread because I was like, what the hell? So that twist has haunted me and will continue to haunt me like in the upcoming weeks. On that note, my least favorite husbands of hers would have to be Don Adler and Max Gerard as the very close second. Don because he's an abusive buttface, and Max because he loved Evelyn Hugo, not Evelyn. That and he kept calling her slurs, which makes him a huge butthead. So this book definitely didn't shy away from dark content like Don hitting Evelyn, as well as the uber gross pedophilic tendencies of Hollywood producers. God, even just thinking about the stuff that Evelyn had to do to get in, it makes me shudder. I mean, we been knew about Hollywood pedophiles and like casting couch situations, like if that's the right term for it. Screw Harvey Weinstein, Jeff Epstein, and all those gross men, by the way. So while I do appreciate that Taylor Jenkins Reid doesn't hold back on that, like it's still tough to read. So another point I want to make was that at the beginning of the book, when Evelyn was trying to choose what name to go by because she has to hide her Cuban heritage, like it's sad, but it reminded me a little bit of the Netflix series Hollywood. So Darren Criss's character was half Filipino, but he was passing for white. Yet, unlike Evelyn, he chose to be proud of his heritage. So I'm not condemning Evelyn for what she did. Like, after all, old Hollywood wasn't kind to anyone who wasn't white. Even in recent times, they would stereotype the heck out of any ethnicity that isn't white, or typecast certain ethnicities into certain roles. And yes, I'm talking about anyone who looks Middle Eastern being cast into a terrorist role. So I don't blame her, but also you can't help but feel bad for her when she's feeling the loss of her heritage, which was her only connection left to her mother. Before I conclude this video, here are a couple of my favorite passages from the novel. So this first passage is the one that convinced me to read the novel in the first place. I'm bisexual. Don't ignore half of me so you can fit me into a box, Monique. Don't do that. So another thing I loved was this one when Evelyn was explaining her bisexual identity to Monique. Being bisexual didn't make me disloyal. So that was a really good thing for her to emphasize, especially since bisexuals do get stereotyped frequently as disloyal and promiscuous, or even confused. And finally, this last passage, it hurt me to read. It took me about 4 months to realize that Max had no intention of even trying to love me, that he was only capable of loving the idea of me. So this passage made me hate Max Gerard, and then I began to despise him when he actually used the D slur at Evelyn and tried to out her before she was even ready. So yeah, those were the 3 passages in the novel that stuck to me and will stick to me for a long time. Overall, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was a beautifully written story with complex, flawed, and realistic characters. I do get easily attached and obsessed with novels most times, but this one, it's different. No book has ever made me feel so much heartbreak or made me cry at several points throughout the story. It's the best book I've read in a while, and dare I say that it will be one of my all-time favorites, right up there with Six of Crows and Percy Jackson. I can't state enough how you have to read this book and allow yourself to be intrigued and captivated by Evelyn Hugo and her story. And that's a wrap on The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. My next video is going to be up by early to mid-September, and it will be on Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe.